Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this webinar of Futuria Fuels. We're very grateful for everybody making the time to join us on this session. The webinar will be recorded and you will have an opportunity to write questions in the Q&A section that you see on your screen. We probably won't have time to answer the questions during the webinar, but we will get back to you if you leave us also an email address. We will make sure we reply to all of those questions after the webinar has finished. My name is Rebecca Groen and I'm CEO of Futuria Fuels. For those of you joining us from India, you may be more familiar with our brand name Supergas, which we've proudly been exploiting for the last couple of decades. In this webinar, we would like to explain the call for proposals for a pre-feasibility study on rDME production in India. There will be 3 presenters during this webinar. I am starting it off, then I will hand over to my colleague Rui Amorim, and then he will hand over to our colleague Bindu Lathwal, based in Hyderabad in India. So first of all, please let me just set the stage for why we are doing this call for proposals. So if you move to the first slide, please, Bindu. We see a lot of activity, and I'm sure all of you on the call will understand and hear the same discussions. Net zero is a hot topic, and it's real attention, gaining attention on the world stage. This picture, taken at the launch of the Global Biofuels Alliance at the G20 last September, proudly shows Prime Minister Modi together with Prime Minister Lula from Brazil and Biden from the USA, and the other 5 launching countries of the GBA, joining hands to focus on the potential role and the important role of biofuels in the on the global stage. This is really exciting and a great step. And we know that there's a lot of activity all around all the different uses of biofuels. But if we zoom in a little bit on what exactly the relevance is for India, on the next slide, you will see some of Prime Minister Modi's key priorities to get towards India's net zero emission target. It's a 5-point plan, and I won't try and explain and pronounce it properly, but you all know this is a really important framework for activity in India to really reach this net zero emission target. Firstly, bringing its non-fossil energy capacity up. Secondly, increasing renewable energy provision. Thirdly, cutting down the carbon emissions. Fourthly, the carbon intensity, and that will lead to a net zero by 2070. We know getting there, and on the next slide you will see getting there will require a lot of activity. But one thing that worries us a little bit as LPG distributors is that the global focus is on sustainable aviation fuel, plastics and hydrogen. There's a lot of focus on these very important parts within the overall energy mix. And we know that there will be a lot of focus on creating the right solutions also in India for aviation fuel, sustainable aviation fuel, for alternatives for plastic and for hydrogen. All of these are vital and really important solutions. However, for us, as global LPG distributors, it doesn't go far enough, and we're really engaged and looking forward to seeing how we can also support this initiative, the global framework, also specifically for India, for LPG. So on the next slide, you will see why this is important to us as SHV Energy globally, Futuria Fuels, and specifically in India as Supergas. We offer and distribute customer-centric off-grid energy in the form of LPG predominantly, also bio-LPG and LNG. in cylinders, in tanks, for transport, for domestic heating, for industrial and commercial uses of heat. SHV Energy is one of the SHV group of companies, privately owned and held in the Netherlands, but with a very global reach. So you see here the logos of the different companies. Hopefully you recognize Supergas proudly in the middle there, which is our brand positioned in India to support customers throughout the country with a head office in Hyderabad. Futuria Fuels, which I am honored to be CEO of, and this presentation today, this webinar, is partly brought to you by the Futuria Fuels team, has been set up to drive all of the activities that we have to get alternatives to fossil LPG for our global customers, for those different uses of domestic heating, domestic cooking, vitally important, of course, in India, as you will hear about later in this webinar, and also transport and industrial process heat. So the next slide, I just wanted to clarify a little bit what our mission is. We are, as Futuria Fuels, all in on sustainable fuels, and we really believe that we need to look very closely at different opportunities in different countries to make this happen. And our mission is to supply sustainable molecules and solutions to our global businesses like Supergas in India by innovating on-purpose production of liquid gas, by leading in global advocacy and developing collaborations, partnerships and investments. And what we're here to do today in this webinar is to explain how this particular call for pre-feasibility study proposals fits into that overall mission. The next slide, I think, is focusing on what we're doing already in many different topics in R&D, research and development. We know there's a lot of very interesting ideas how to convert feedstock into propane, butane, rDME. And we are already working with many different partners around the world on different proposals. Some are taking locally available feedstock, some are taking future-oriented recycled carbon or ingredients feedstock as the main proponent, but all of them are geared towards producing an alternative for fossil LPG. On the next slide, the last slide before I hand over to my colleagues to take this into more detail, we really believe that there is no one single solution, but there are lots of very strong alternatives and strong proponents for a distributed, off-grid, decentral and very varied use of LPG today that can be served by on-purpose processes to produce bio-LPG, rDME, which you will hear about now, eLPG, rLPG, and in future, where it makes sense, potentially some uses also for hydrogen. So I hope this introduction as to what Futuria Fuels is, why we believe this is so important, gives a bit of context. But now let's zoom in on how this really could be relevant for an Indian context. And I'm going to hand over to my colleague, Rui Amorin. Excuse me for swapping seats.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Good morning. My name is Rui Amorin. It's a pleasure to be here with you. I am the Chief Project Development Officer for Futuria Fuels. As Rebecca explained, I will take it over and give a little bit more information about what is rDME, how it can be produced, why it is so important, rDME for the LPG industry. So basically, starting from the beginning, rDME means renewable recycled carbon dimethyl ether. And why is key for the industry, for the LPG industry? So basically, rDME is a similar molecular component as it is for propane or butane. It can be stored at room temperature, And like LPG is easy to transport, is a liquid, we can bottle it, is exactly in terms of chemical, is a very good molecule for us to start with. Can be, in fact, reduce the GHG's emissions by up to 85%, when compared also to diesel or heating oil or any other of those types of fuels, and has no harmful particles. So it's a versatile fuel. In fact, it has been used for many years already in the chemical sector, and it has also different applications such as aerosol as a different purpose for the product. It can be used including in the sector, in the transport sector, or also for the cooking, domestic and industrial heating. It can be blended with LPG, and therefore ideal for us, for our industry, due to the assets that we have also available and invested for the many years in the industry. So next slide, please. So why rDME is key for the LPG industry? As you may know, in India is the third largest user of LPG globally. It's really an important fuel in India, and it can really be also, as I explained, be blended with the LPG. In this way, it decarbonizes and reduces the imports in India. So it's a two-fold improving the net zero goals in India. Next slide, please. How can we produce rDME? So in fact, we can have 3 different pathways. We have wet feedstock, where we convert it to anaerobic digestion, and afterwards we go through via methanol to DME, rDME in this case, or via feedstock, agricultural waste, solid wastes, and then a gasification and converting into DME as well, or even CO2 and hydrogen, and again the conversion to DME. Those are 3 potential pathways for the product that we would like to be producing. Next slide, please. So in terms of range of feedstocks that can be used, as I mentioned, it can go via biofuels, biogas, but also wastes coming from household, and it is in fact municipal wastes and unrecyclable plastic types of waste that we can convert, and a combination from hydrogen and CO2. Imagine you have green hydrogen and you have CO2 capture. This will be the idea to produce rDME for our purpose as well. Next slide, please. So I will try to give you now a little bit of some examples of different types of technologies and different type of projects in the field of rDME. Some examples, please. Next slide. So the normal fossil fuel route, which is not in this scope, as we are looking to produce rDME, so recyclable version of DME, but in fact, it's a process that has been already in place, converting coal using gasification, and therefore the synthesis of methanol and then rDME production. This is the existing process. So we have the challenge of using different types of feedstocks, and therefore we have experience from the industry in many different projects. Next slide, please. So the fossil fuel route, it is in fact existing technologies to produce via methanol, dehydration of methanol, and then DME production. We have known names, as you can see here. I don't think that will be a surprise for anyone, but in fact, these are the ones that we have some examples of existing players in our industry. Next slide, please. So another example that we have here, we have been used in this case from our own fuels feedstock that is basically waste animal feeds, that basically again converted in using syngas, methanol conversion, and then you have different types of markets possible to be commercialized. Our own market, it is in fact the low carbon intensity LPG, but there is applications, as I mentioned, to fuels and renewable hydrogen even. So this is one example that we have. Next one, please. So this is a little bit more in detail about the capacity of Oberon. This is an example once more, is information that you can find it available in internet as well. But in fact, it just gives an idea of that it is possible to develop these projects, and we have higher capacities in this case. The project that we have, the call for proposal that my colleague Bindu will explain, the capacity that we have is 10 times the fold of the one that is mentioned there. So you're talking about 50 kiloton per year. Next slide, please. This project is led by Futuria Fuels and SHV Energy. It's a project that we are developing in the UK, in Birmingham, and basically makes use of technology for the gasifier from Q. Associated to that, there will be then rDME synthesis from Brentford. That will be the setup. This demonstration plant is to be targeted to produce rDME by the end of this year, just to make sure that we have a good starting point to develop our commercial plant. This, as I mentioned, this is a project that is taking the lead from Futuria Fuels Limited, that is CFL, for the project management via Dimeter, which is a vehicle company that has been created by SHV Energy and by UGI. Next slide, please. So this is again different types of approach that we have, some flagship projects, some of them in early stages, some of them already in further development and trying to become commercial plants as well. All of them, in many of these situations, require quite an investment. So the commercial stage of these projects require a real demonstration of the technology so that it is possible to bring all the partners that we need in place to develop these projects. Thank you. Next slide. Next slide. So some examples of the work that has been done in India for DME. This is one of the projects that has been successful in producing DME from methanol. It's the CSIR tested DME in the automotive. In this case, is the tuk-tuks that you can see there. It is possible to use. They are being very successful in this case. So one application that we can also make use of is for the transport industry. The next slide, please. Another example is the IIT Kanpur together with the SERB center. They have developed the first DME fuel tractor, which is again application on the transport and equipment side. So again, different types of projects already developed in India. Next one, please. In the very early stages, we have a project from Amol Carbons. This project has been developed in the very early stages, a very small plant, which is very interesting and for us to further develop. It is again indicative of the Indian way of pushing also the market in this direction by using local knowledge, entrepreneurship, to develop these projects, for which we really very much appreciate and like to be involved. Next slide, please. I will now pass it over to my colleague, Bindu, which will explain a little bit more in detail what do we mean with the call for proposals for rDME production in India. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rui. Thank you for explaining why rDME is so significant for LPG industry and for India energy mix as well for future, and giving us so many examples how different global companies and Indian companies are working on this space, on researching and innovating different pathways. I am Bindu Latwal, looking after the development of sustainable fuels in India for Futuria Fuels. Before going ahead, let me remind you, you can ask the questions in our Q&A section. We will respond to it as we will have time later as well. But please do raise your questions if you have any questions or queries related to rDME or any other sustainable fuels regarding what we are presenting today. So before taking to corporate proposal, let me just give little more information about the examples which we explained regarding India. So in India, we see some great work going on, especially on rDME in India. And the first example, which we explained regarding CSIR, NCL, who have developed their indigenous process technologies to produce rDME from dehydration of DME. That is great work, and all the credits to CSIR, NCL, and the supporting organizations who supported the research. And the second example is from IIT Kanpur, great research, but other application may be in the transport and automobiles. And they have done a prototyping to use 100% DME fuel tractor. And that engine has showed better thermal efficiency and lesser emission as compared to diesel engine. So again, a great research done by IIT Kanpur and the support of SERB from the Department of Science and Technology. And the third example, which we explain, is from our startup world. In India, which is doing great in the recent years in doing research and coming up with different business proposals, even for energy sector. So Almol Carbon just proved the proof of concept with the support of IOCL to have this proof of concept in place, producing rDME from agri waste, where we can easily say in India, we do have a lot of surplus agricultural waste and other kind of waste available to utilize this kind of pathway. So that was just a little more focus, like how much work is going on regarding rDME in India. These were just 3 examples we took from India. It is not the exhaustive list. We just took this example because they made headlines in the recent years, but there are many other companies as well. They are working in this space and utilizing carbon dioxide and making methanol from it, and then DME. So a lot of work going on, again, very interesting area. So now coming to our specific actions, which we are looking at Futuria Fuels and what are plans regarding our call for proposal. So before taking to specific to our call for proposal, I would like to highlight what our inspiration specific to India is, our dream. Our inspirations come from ethanol program, which has been very successful in India and globally. As many of you know that we have achieved our E10 target ahead of time, and now PM Modi have launched E20 blending target of 20% blending ethanol with petrol, and where we are progressing very well. And I'm proud to say that at this platform. So just taking inspiration from there, and what if we have some similar kind of approach in blending of renewable DME, which is locally produced using indigenous local feedstocks, and we have some guidelines on blending it with LPG. So just imagine how much volumes it would require if we have some kind of R10 approach, or even at lesser percentage, it would require us to produce 3 million tons of locally produced rDME if we have that kind of blending approach in DME as well to defossilize LPG industry. So for specifics coming to action, so we have our call for proposal open for rDME production in India. So we are inviting interested parties to submit pre-feasibility study proposal for rDME production in India for a commercial plant of 50,000 tons of rDME per year. This is this is not the desktop type of study we are looking. Here we are looking for real demonstration of rDME value chain, starting from the feedstock selection to the rDME production. So if I talk about like one step back here and talk about the potential, that how much potential in terms of feedstock we have, and these are very conservative numbers we have put it here, that we produce more than 600 million metric tons of agricultural residue. And then if we combine municipal solid waste as well, which is over 60 million metric ton and which is growing at very bigger rate in our urban cities in India. So if we take these basic numbers and just see and calculate, like if all of these waste and residues can be converted to rDME, it would come close to supply the global volumes of LPG. And you would be surprised to know that the global size of LPG market is equivalent and comparable to the SAF, where we have that much investments and that much focus as well. So in the LPG industry, and the potential here which we are talking about is already quite big. Then another important factor just to highlight here is the cost of production. So as most of you also know that cost of production of renewable energy and the new sustainable fuels sometimes is quite costly. But here in this call for proposal and in our plans, we are looking at cost of production somewhere in line with LPG equivalent in India. So cost would be one of the important factor to target and focus in this demonstration. Then if I talk about, if you see the figure down there, this is one of the pathway which we explained earlier as well. So this is just one of the pathway which we are trying to explore in India, that if we take agri residues and other local feedstocks in a pre-treated form, where maybe in a briquettes pellets or in a torrefied form, and put a gasification and produce syngas and then synthesize renewable dimethyl ether from it, this can be one of the interesting pathway. But this is not the limiting pathway for you to apply. There might be other pathway. You can also have different feedstocks. We can also produce renewable DME from biogas, for example, which is already a big topic in India. So this is just one of the pathway which we have, which we are showing here and in our website as well. But this is not limiting just for the agri residues. Then this last part to say that here we are looking for collaborations. We are seeking partners across value chain. We are seeking collaboration from feedstock suppliers, technology players, different EPC players to help us in this project and be partner in this demonstration of rDME in India. You can find more details on our website, futuriafuels.com, or you can scan the QR code as well, and it will lead us to our dedicated web page on this call for proposal, where you will find a lot of useful information. What are the requirements? What are the timelines? And what are the TRL, CRL levels which we are looking? Also to highlight that we are looking at little higher maturity of the technology here, because we believe the technology is mature enough in rDME production to take to the next level of commercialization. In terms of budgets and timeline, very important to highlight that we are sponsoring this study. So winning proposal will receive funding up to 2 crore to perform this study. And if there are separate trials, separate testing needed, that funding request can also be made apart from this. And in terms of timeline, we have 15th May as the deadline to submit the proposal. And then we will go through the semi-finalists. We will talk to you in more details and come to the final winning proposal somewhere in June. So feel free to send me any questions you might have and submit your proposal to me and my email address. And you will find this information on our website as well. Which is a dedicated web page. You can scan the QR code, you can search Futuria Fuels on Google, and you will find all this information there. But feel free to reach me out if there's any questions related to rDME, related to our call for proposal, or related to any other questions regarding Futuria Fuels and our product portfolio. I would like to sum up all of this discussion and all of this with our standard slide that by saying and by focusing that we are all in on sustainable fuels for off-grid energy, as our CEO also mentioned. We are continuously working towards developing sustainable fuels through innovation, through partnership, through collaboration across industry, because we believe that we need to make bigger steps, and these bigger steps and these progress would require certain level of partnership and collaboration across industry. So that's where what we are looking in India as well, looking for different kind of collaboration across value chain so that we can make this rDME production project successful in India with customized approach, with specific to Indian conditions, indigenous feedstock, technology, and much more. So I'll sum up my part with this quote from our Prime Minister Modi, that how biofuels are so much important for India and how they will help our farmers' income, how they will help us in processing the waste and residues, how they will create more jobs, and most importantly, how they will make our country energy independent and reduce the dependency on imports. And I believe strongly in this quote, and rDME is one such biofuel. Thank you. Now I hand it over to Rui again for the final remarks.
Yes, so again, thank you very much for your participation in our webinar. It has been a pleasure to give you a little bit more information about what Futuria Fuels stands for, what we see the potential in India for rDME production. As Bindu explained, we have this call open until the 15th of May, and we are looking forward to provide you further information and guidance as you need it. As Bindu explained, feel free to ask questions and clarifications. We will be very much welcome to give further clarifications from our side. We are really looking forward to receive your proposals. They are key for our understanding and bringing also the message across India, specifically for rDME production and the LPG industry. We do, again, appreciate all your input and questions, and we will be for sure looking forward to send you further information in terms of this presentation to you and any other kind of developments that we will be taking for the coming months preceding this webinar. Once again, it's a pleasure. Our team is really full of energy to continue this pathway and to continue developing rDME production in India. This is just a starting point of our journey. It's a baby step, but it's a step that is going in the right direction, and we'll have really successful if we find the right people, the right partners, the motivation behind to bring these projects to life. Once again, thank you, and looking forward to receiving your feedback. Have a good day, good afternoon. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.